out of control.
I have all these agendas that can come out for nothing.
I'd like to call the Town of Rocky Hill Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting of Wednesday, July 26, 2023 to order. First business is public hearing.
Site plan application, Andrea L. Gomes representing Vessel RE Holdings LLC and Vessel Technologies Incorporated proposing 96 apartments, 91 bedroom and 62 bedroom with 29 units being designated as affordable in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes Section 8-30G, along with associated site improvements for property located at 125 Henkel Way in an OP Office Zoning District ID 17-008.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Again, for the record, my name is Andrea Gomes. I'm an attorney at Hinckley Allen in Hartford here tonight on behalf of the applicants. With me tonight are Josh Levy, the Executive Vice President of Vessel. We also have Seamus Moran, our civil engineer with H&H Engineering Associates, Mark Vertucci, our traffic engineer with Fuss & O'Neill, and just for the record, Alex Walter, Development Manager with Vessel, will be joining us. I think there's quite a bit of traffic out there, so he'll be here shortly. Before we get to the substance of our presentation tonight, Mr. Chairman, just a few procedural housekeeping matters for the Commission. The Commission should have before it our application materials that we submitted on May 31st. It included, at this point the Commission is familiar, our tabbed-bound application package and accompanying a second tabbed-bound memorandum with exhibits that we call our Affordable Housing Needs Memo, which I'll get into, and then, of course, our plan set. The Commission has in its tabbed package narrative excerpts of the stormwater report, but the full kit and caboodle stormwater management report was submitted separately to staff. On June 5th, we realized we had not included our geotechnical report, which is relevant to the stormwater, so we included that as well for staff. And on the 25th, just yesterday, we submitted our will serve letter from Eversource confirming electric service to the site. Earlier today, hot off the presses, we did get our revised rendered perspectives of the buildings. So, and I think Commissioner Zerilli, Commissioner Aglico, thank you. I will get it, I promise. Aglico, I believe both of you had expressed interest at the pre-application meeting in those rendered perspectives. So the Commission has hard copies of those that I passed out earlier. We've also included those same perspectives in the PowerPoint that we're going through today, so we'll be able to walk the Commission through that as well. Regarding public notice, we did comply with all of the required public notice measures. Town staff, of course, took care of the newspaper publication for the hearing, so a big thank you to Ms. Ricci and Lynn Witowski as well. We submitted proof of our sign being posted on July 12th, and then proof of our mailing to abutters on July 13th, and staff should have all of that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the slides themselves, the PowerPoint for tonight's presentation has been submitted. So, to date, the record is complete and has been peppered accordingly. Just to preview what we're proposing tonight for the presentation, Mr. Chairman, is I'm going to kick it off. Again, this Commission is familiar at this point, but I'm going to kick it off, hand it off to the rest of our team to run through their respective areas of expertise, and then I'll then bookend the presentation with closing comments. Of course, as I'm sure the Commission is aware, a lot of what we talk about tonight will be familiar or in some cases repetitive of what the Commission heard during our pre-application in May, or from a prior application that Vessel had filed. We respectfully ask for the Commission's patience. This is a brand new application with a brand new public hearing start, so we have to put everything into the record that we believe is relevant to the Commission's decision. Of course, that being said, we've done our best to put on and to develop a concise and efficient presentation for the Commission that will hopefully answer a lot of your questions at the outset. So with that, I will dive right in And hopefully this works. Perfect. So the subject property here, 125 Hinkle Way, is about 5.87 acres, located just north of the Hinkle Way Brook Street intersection. It's located in the OP zoning district, which permits certain residential uses versus special permit and site plan approval. There are a variety of uses near the site, including Orthopedic Associates of Hartford Surgical Center to the north and Brooklawn Funeral Home. Trying to use the mouse.
Do we need the
Brook-
screen? We need the screen. Should we have the screen?
There are people, other people in the audience.
Yes, it's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
I
I
can
think
pause
we
for a
can
second to
have-
bring down the screen.
Because the people at
We
home.
should have
right.
the screen,
Yep.
Well, that shows up
just in
on
case
here.
someone shows up.
Oh, that's,
At home, it shows up on
shows
here.
up like that.
I'll back up for just a second so members of the public can see.
Oh, we did.
And there it is. Okay, so we did not get very far. This is just the cover page, which we will come back to, and this is just the second slide. Nearby uses also include, as the commission can see, we have residential uses as well. Most notably, we have the Altera Rocky Hill Apartments over here to the west of the site, and then there's a variety of residential uses here, primarily single-family use to the east and southeast. The site itself, as the commission can see, a little bit from this overview from GIS, although it's more visible here. The site is currently unimproved and mostly wooded. At slide 4, you have some, again, thanks to Google Street View, you have a view from Hinkle Way, looking, I think, northwest a bit, and then to the right, you have a view of the site from Brook Street, just before you're turning left onto Hinkle Way to access the site. So Vessel's proposal today, why we're here tonight, is the proposed construction of a multifamily community consisting of 96 rental apartments in 2 buildings, and that is broken down between 90 one-bedroom units at 525 square feet and 6 two-bedroom units at 750 square feet. Seamus will go into more detail on the site design and the grading and the drainage, but I did want to highlight just a few things for the commission now. And we did mention this again at the pre-application, and it stays true through today. We did take into account the commission's feedback and the various commissioners' points of interest in the prior application that Vessel had filed on Main Street. To be clear, that application has absolutely nothing to do with tonight's application, other than the fact that we heard the commission's interests or preferences, and we took them into account in developing the design for this site. A few of those elements include parking. We have 116, and again, Seamus will touch on that, but we have 116 parking spaces on site, and we have designated loading areas around the roundabout just before the buildings. Friendly reminder to the commission that Public Act 2129 limited the number of parking spaces that a commission could require. So we meet the Public Act 2129 standard, and we provide an additional 14 spaces for visitors and guests. We've also included, and Mr. Chairman, I think this was of particular interest to you, you'll see this more on the landscape plan at the rear of the civil plan set. We've included an outdoor amenity space. At the rear of the site, there's a wooded walking path and a landscaped area that will have benches and birdhouses, plus a picnic area that will provide a calming space, away from the street and the site frontage, where residents and their guests can kick back and relax on site. We have provided ample emergency vehicle access and circulation throughout the site. In fact, Mr. Moran spoke with the fire marshal, I believe, either earlier this week or last week, and he verbally confirmed that the vehicle turning exhibit or the vehicle turning plan in your plan set is accurate, and that he has no concerns with the application from a fire safety perspective. And then last but not least, we have elevators in each building, which are sized, as is required by code, sized to accommodate stretchers. So those are just a couple of the things that the commission had expressed interest in last time that we've taken into account here. Of course, as with all vessel buildings, the buildings themselves have been designed to be fully code compliant with the applicable building code provisions and fire safety and fire prevention codes. There is a letter in the Commission's May 31st application package at tab 4 from a Connecticut licensed professional engineer confirming code compliance. Regarding affordability, as the Commission knows, this application has been filed under Connecticut General Statutes 830G. It's been filed as what's known as a set-aside development, meaning 30% of the units, here 29 units, will be formally rent restricted for a period of 40 years. 830G provides that if the proposed residential development proposed residential development does set aside those 30% of units for households earning here in Rocky Hill this year approximately $53,000 to $85,000 annually, then the Zoning Commission can only deny the application if it presents a substantial public health or safety concern that cannot be addressed by reasonable changes to the plan and which outweighs the need for affordable housing in the town and in the region. Given this very narrow review standard that the Commission has, and as the Commission may recall, non-compliance with the underlying zoning regulations is not a valid basis for denial of an 830G application. That being said, Vessel and its team took the underlying bulk standards of the OP zoning district and did everything they could to meet them. And the Commission will note on the zoning table, we've met nearly all of the underlying bulk requirements of the OP, even though we didn't have to. There is certainly a need for affordable housing in Rocky Hill. Connecticut Department of Housing's 10% list for 2022 shows that only 4.93% of Rocky Hill's housing stock is considered affordable. And our affordability plan, which is at tab 5 of our original application package, sets out the rental prices for what we've called the housing opportunity units based on the 2022 HUD numbers and using the 830G formula. So here, the rental prices will be between $1,082 and $1,324 for a one-bedroom unit, and $1,349 and $1,649 for a two-bedroom unit. That being said, in accordance with Vessel's mission, all of the units will be priced so that they are accessible to moderate income households. These rental prices, and I'm stealing a little bit of Mr. Levy's thunder here, but these rental prices will reach members of your community who otherwise would not have been able to find housing in the area. We're talking about your teachers, your firefighters, police officers, and so on. It's no secret that rents are rising everywhere. Connecticut is just one of many states, if not all states, and there's a nationwide shortage of affordable housing. We've provided the Commission what I mentioned earlier. We call it the Affordable Housing Needs Memorandum, provides the Commission with some updated data on the need for affordable housing in Connecticut, in nationwide, Connecticut, and in Rocky Hill specifically, and there is additional data at the tabs in the package that the Commission can review. In our May application package at tab 13, we actually even included a Wall Street Journal article from October 2022 explaining how these raising rents combined with supply shortages and financing burdens have increased the demand for prefabricated housing. Vessel itself is featured as one of the innovators using this type of construction to try and fill that gap, that need for affordable units. And of course, the 2015 POCD and 2022 Affordable Housing Plan for the town of Rocky Hill, they recognize the need for affordable housing, and this proposal will help implement and fulfill a number of those goals. I'll get back to that at the end of the presentation. So last but not least, I did want to highlight, and before I turn it over to Mr. Levy, one additional piece of information. And Commissioner Zerilli, I believe it was you who had asked about this at the pre-application meeting. At tab 10, the commission will see a phase 1 assessment of the site from Triton Environmental. We provided a little bit of a summary blurb in our cover letter to the commission about the phase 1, but as we explained, Triton conducted soil testing on this site as part of its phase 1 assessment, and the results indicated the presence of dieldrin and total DDT in the soil. No other pesticides were detected, and I understand that other sites in the area have had the same results come back, given the prior agricultural use in this area. But because the pesticides it did find on site did not exceed the applicable criteria for soil impacted with pesticides, Triton confirms that groundwater leaching is not a concern on site here. So overall, Triton recommended 2 measures for this site to address the limited amount of pesticides it did find. It recommended that Vessel cap the impacted soils by placing the soils under the building, under the parking lot, et cetera. For the areas that were not paving, Triton recommended using a geotextile fabric and then putting new soil on top, and that would properly mitigate the low levels of pesticides found on site and provide an appropriate barrier in accordance with state standards for this site. We noted explicitly in our letter, but I want to make the commission aware, we are happy to accept Triton's recommendations as a condition of the commission's approval and implement those measures, including, I think Triton referenced the provision of a soil management plan as part of that. We'd be happy and willing to accept that as a condition of approval. Once those measures are employed, Triton confirmed that the affected soils, quote, will no longer present a risk of direct contact, which is really what we're trying to get here. With that, I will hand it over to Josh, who'll be giving the commission an overview of Vessel itself, the proposed design of the building, and the proposed landscaping. And Josh will be touching on the perspectives that we submitted earlier today. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Is the microphone in a good spot?
Yep.
Excellent. I see a bunch of us have been sitting in the sun. Hope everybody's been having a good summer so far. I know many of you have already heard about Vessel and both our mission as well as our housing product, so I won't belabor too much of it today except to reintroduce it and add in some information about it as we continue forward. The purpose of creating Vessel after 20 years in multifamily housing was the notion that we felt that high-quality housing was only available to people who made an extraordinary amount of money. If you look at new construction housing across the Hartford County area, you're talking about housing that for one-bedroom units is over $2,000 a month and isn't available for people who are teachers or municipal employees who are starting out their careers and form the backbone of many of the communities that they want to both work in and live in. And so, we believe that we can provide an alternative for those people that is, both sustainable and energy efficient and healthy so that they can have a better quality of life and enjoy the communities that they work and want to live in. So when we thought about what housing was, we really think about housing as the launch pad for people's dreams. Why do we think about that way? Well, Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about sort of what do you need for the foundation in order to be successful in your life, and housing, safety, security is one of the primary examples of that. And so what we think about is if you provide people with a high quality place to live, something that they're proud of, something that they enjoy, they want to have, a friend over, or they're proud to show their parents where they're living. All of those things add both to the quality of their life as well as to their overall psychological, emotional, and an overall health and well-being. what we're thinking about when we think about housing in communities is really who are we providing housing to? And many of the people that we think about are people who are the backbone of communities. They're people working in our stores. They're people who are teaching our children. They're people who are nurses, essential workers throughout the community, firefighters, municipal employees. And what they all have in common is that, many of them end up commuting very long distances to work, or, can't, work in the communities that they, are members of and want to be members to, or can't return back to the communities that they grow up in. We hear all the time from, even parents who say, my kids would love to live in this community, but of course they can't find anywhere to live. And, we also hear at the same time the saying, and I don't want them moving back in with me. So, what we're thinking about in that sense is how do we provide a home for those people that is, dignified and, a place where they want to live and represents them. When we think about, Rocky Hill, we think about so many of the things that are sort of unique to Rocky Hill that, I've heard from, members of the commission before, and that I've seen firsthand myself. It's a place that has wonderful, natural resources, beautiful parks and hiking trails. It has, terrific diversity in terms of inclusion, and a community and ethos about, of generosity and opportunity and community service. And so when we think about all of that, we think about, this housing really being a representation of all of that, in terms of giving people the opportunity to have a better quality of life. So, as planners and developers, we always think about, what makes a good housing development. And, sometimes, we think about, things that we think about as important. And then, along the way, quite honestly, we learn from the boards that we meet with. And I think, this is an example of a situation where we heard a lot from this board. And I think the feedback we got on our previous application has made a better application the next time around that's representative of something that's even an improvement on what we had. But what we do know is that traditional construction approaches, traditional construction materials, they're not meeting the needs of our modern day society anymore. And by that, I mean, we're in a situation where, unfortunately, this is an industry that continues to see rising costs, decreasing quality, and by virtue of what we really look at, also a huge slew of housing, that was built in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s becoming functionally obsolete. And, in order to combat the current paradigm that exists in the housing ecosystem, something has to change, and that's what we've tried to do with our housing product. So just talking a little bit about, some of the things that we've tried to, address in terms of, goals and values associated with what we do. High quality design. So, we've talked a lot about the design of our building, but 100% steel, fully alarmed, fully sprinklered, elevator served, built to universal design standards so people of all varying abilities can use any unit in a vessel building, solar arrays being standard on the roof so that we have essentially, what should operate as a net zero building, sustainability measures that allow it to be the most sustainable building possible, an all electric building so that it uses no fossil fuels. From the perspective of, health and wellness, we think about things like preventing mold and other problems from occurring in units, right? One of the biggest problems in buildings is slow leaks behind inaccessible walls where drywall ends up sopping up the moisture in a building, and you have mold behind walls that you never see about. In a vessel building, that's not possible. It can never happen. And so, we promote a healthier building. We think about all sort of different aspects of, the externalities of development. So, typical building, 18 to 24 months to deliver to market. Our building, about 9 months, so we don't have idling trucks on the site producing, emissions. We build our buildings just faster, more efficiently, while also producing a higher quality, safer, more sustainable, and energy efficient product. And then, the idea of accessibility, obviously, what we try to think about is, making all of the building, all of the units accessible to all different people. So the universal design standards in the units, hearing and visual prompts through our smart home technology, having the highest levels of safety and security through, in-unit alarm systems, keyless entry and, intercom systems at the door, camera systems around the whole building, and everything else so that it's the safest building possible. So just thinking about everything, associated with that, we'll skip ahead, but, the idea behind all of this is, sustainability, all LED lighting, VRF systems with heat pumps in order to maximize the energy efficiency of the HVAC system, low flow fixtures. We have active water and electrical systems that create super energy efficiency in the buildings through our smart home system. We have recyclability of all the materials that we use. So, you heard from me last time, you may remember or not, we don't have no drywall or paint in the unit. So our walls are made from a sustainable material internally that's both hypoallergenic and antimicrobial, but that material is also recyclable. So if it ever were to get damaged, we can use it on both sides by flipping it around. We can also send it back to the factory. They actually burn those panels to create fuel in order to produce the new panels for us and for others who utilize them. So the idea of a cradle-to-cradle philosophy associated with the materials we use. We'll talk about landscaping in a few minutes, but, one of the things we focus on is native plantings, drought-resistant, insect-resistant, materials that aren't going to be ruined at the first, sight of snow. We're in the Northeast, so we all know that there's going to be snow. And so that they're resilient, so that the landscaping looks as good on, year 5 as it did on day 1, because one of the things we always saw as we tried to create, big landscaping packages for developments was if you pick the wrong material, even if you do a great job up front, it ends up looking terrible later on. And what we want to do is make something that looks great forever so that it can be easily maintained and so that we always have a beautiful product for the community and fulfill our community obligations. So, thinking about Hankel Way in terms of, a new approach to the site and the design of the building, you'll see the buildings here. You might recall that in the last application we did, we had a single color on the building. One of the things that was asked of us was there anything you could do to change the front of the building to make it a little bit more interesting? And so we tried to do that with this new design in terms of the exterior panels. You had asked us actually if we would bring some samples of that. We did. My colleague Alex has them. We'll pass them around. And it will show you not only the colors that we were suggesting, but also the materials that we were doing. If it's okay, can we pass them? Happy to answer questions on those as well, but it gives you a sense of the color of the wood proposed, as well as the gray color of the main panel, and then that white panel is actually the interior of the units, and we'll give you a sense of that. So this is a little bit of a close-up view on the building. You can see the entry courts, with a common area around a common circle in the front that allows for circulation around the site, leading to the back of the site where we have the parking, keeping the parking behind the site, except for some minimal parking up front, both for the availability of guests, also for people who need handicap accessible, and the inclusion of loading and unloading zones in the building so that people can easily access them for both moving in or for Amazon deliveries and so on. As you look at the buildings from the back, this is an example. So you see the enclosures around the garbage at the back of the building, and the plantings, in the parking lot, and then moving back here, we go into an aerial view. So I want to point out a little bit of the recreation areas. So at the back of the site, you'll see behind the parking lot, we left an area there that is intended to have benches, picnic tables. There's also a series of birdhouses in order to create, the ability for birds to populate and to provide a sense of nature on the property and other things. You'll notice also on the site plan, and Seamus will go through this in more detail, but there's bike racks on the property and other amenities for purposes of tenant use. This is a close-up of the top of the building, shows where the solar panels are. We're showing it from the top because the building is designed so that the solar panels are not seen from the street, but we wanted you to see that they were on the roof so that you could understand the depiction of them and where they were. The exact number of them will be determined, after once we do a final study of how many are needed in order to achieve the net zero status. But the standard will still stay the same, and the design will still stay the same so that you don't see them from the street level view. So this is a view from the street corner looking down Hankel Way. You can see that there's obviously a change in topography as you move, from Brook Street towards the site on Hankel Way, and you can also see that there is the sidewalk that continues from the corner of Brook Street all the way down to Hankel, so that it's excellent for pedestrian access. This is also an ideal place for people to be able to ride their bikes or to take runs, things like that, as there's a nice sort of circular area where you could easily get, a lot of exercise in this part of town. So, all of that is important, and then, going back to, what our main goal is that, is creating something that's both exceptional and attainable, so that we can service the people that, are imperative in our communities and that are underserved within the housing ecosystem that we have today, creating a new housing paradigm so that people like our graduate students and our young workers and our senior citizens, our teachers are able to enjoy high-quality housing and are able to, take advantage of all the wonderful things that Rocky Hill has to offer. So, in the wise words of, I think it was Yogi Berra, the future ain't what it used to be, but it may be better. And, what we think about is this, is that, the vessel, building and vessel system is obviously, in our mind, an innovation, but it's also, different than what was, historically built. We've tried to rethink everything in terms of, purposely building something, right? People have asked us, why aren't there shutters on the building? Well, because shutters once served a purpose in a home in order to, either create shade in a house or to protect the windows, but our windows don't need protection because of the high quality nature of triple glazed, argon filled, low E windows that are super energy efficient, provide a low heat index, and all sorts of other things. And so we've tried to take all of the innovations that exist in manufacturing and product development in the materials that are available today in order to produce something that is a state-of-the-art product that's available now. In terms of the interiors, I think, I'd shown you these, I think, last time, so you've probably seen them. But, just some pictures of what, these interiors look like. The units, as are predominantly one-bedrooms. The doors that you see in the center both open up completely. They, allow access to what is the bathroom suite, where you have a separate commode room, a separate shower area, as well as a changing area. You also have a laundry area in there, as well as, closets and other things like that. We have 9-foot ceilings. Everything is LED lighting. It also provides Cyrillic lighting and other light therapy features, as well as 24/7 air monitoring and purification, so people are breathing all clean, healthy air. As was the same last time, as you enter your bathroom suite, we've got UVC technology in order to provide sterilization throughout the bathroom so that it's always healthy and clean for people. And then that second group of doors that you're looking at right now leads into your bedroom. Both doors can also be opened to create, a very expansive feel to the unit, or be completely separated so that you have, complete privacy. This is a little view of the bedroom. You can see, the huge floor-to-ceiling window. It's about, 5 feet wide by 9 feet high, providing tons of light. Blinds and everything are standard in the unit, so there's no problem with, people getting sleep and, being well rested. The walls, as as I mentioned before, there's no drywall or paint, so what you're looking at is our interior panelization system, which provides a number of benefits to the tenant, as well as to the ongoing maintenance and health and sustainability of the units. This is a view from the top of the unit to give you a sense of the unit layout. As you can see, everything is built, to both universal design standards for accessibility purposes and just for, purposes of giving people the most luxurious and enjoyable, unit possible. A little bit about our landscaping as we touch on it. I mean, as I might have mentioned before, we try to use both native plants as well as plants that are drought resistant, insect resistant, and also achieve certain goals associated with it. So you'll notice the plants along the back of the building and the front of the building. Those are beechwood plants that are intended to provide shading to the ground floor units as well as privacy to them so that they have an area that you can't see into them, but they can still get light. You can see around the back area at the back of the property where the little path is, as well as the area for benches and tables, in addition to the birdhouses that are there as well. Specimen trees throughout the property so that we have tree plantings as well as other trees and plantings around the front of the property. We can also see that around the border of the property, both to the, which direction would this be? North. Both to the north of the property where we're keeping all of the existing deciduous trees, as well as to the south of the property where we're keeping deciduous trees and plantings going towards Brook Street in order to shade that area of the property and protect our neighbors and the street. I'll hand it off to Seamus so that he can go over existing conditions. Look forward to answering any questions that you have, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight. Thanks so much for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Seamus Moran, a professional engineer in Connecticut. I work for H&H Engineering Associates, and I was a civil engineer on the project. And I prepared the site plans that you see before you. So I'll just jump right into it. We'll go through the existing condition, kind of a blueprint of what I'll do, existing conditions, site layout plan, grading and drainage, utilities, soil erosion and sediment control, and then I'll pass it off to our traffic engineer, Mark Bertucci, who can talk about the traffic. Okay, so what you see here, can everybody see my cursor from their screen? Okay. So this here is the site, obviously. It's 5.87 acres. Along the northern property line, there's a 0.75 acre wetland. This line that you see here is the 100-foot upland review area. We are not going to be doing anything within the 100-foot upland review area, so everything that you see on our development will be outside the 100-foot upland review area. There's a east-to-west ridge line that runs, if you follow my cursor, that bisects the property, creating almost a northern half and a southern half of the property. Henkel Way is, of course, to the east. We are in the OP, Office Park District, and the upland review, the area outside the 100-foot upland review area is about 3.67 acres of land. Soils on site are very high permeability, infiltrating soils, sands and gravels, almost entirely throughout the site. We had infiltration rates that varied between 43 inches per hour to 143 inches per hour. We had several test pits conducted on the site, several borings conducted, and several permeabilities, which we use for our stormwater management design. The parcel, as Attorney Gomes pointed out, is undeveloped for the most part. I'm sorry, it's completely undeveloped. Most of it is woodland. There's some scrub brush along the front of the property. However, most of the property right now is wooded. Utilities, there's an existing water line in Henkel Way to the east. The sanitary sewer is in Brook Street. So there's an existing main in Brook Street. And then power is available also in Henkel Way. What we're looking to do, so this here is a site plan, site layout plan, as you've seen a couple different times, but we do have a 24-foot wide two-way access drive coming from Henkel Way to a circular roundabout, which provides easy access for loading zones in front of the building, also two smaller parking areas in front of the building so we can have some accessible parking at the main entrances. It also provides access to the rear parking area in the back where the majority of the parking is located. We do have bike racks for each of the buildings, 6 bike racks for the southern building, 6 bike racks for the northern building. 6 total spots are required per the regulations. We have 12 shown. We do have 96 units, 48 units in each building. A total number of parking spaces required is 102. We have 116 proposed, which includes 6 accessible parking spaces and 12 EV-ready parking spaces. The dumpsters, you can see are at my cursor here, which are tucked away behind the building, away from sight of the main road. And as Mr. Levy pointed out, we do have an active and passive recreation area in back of the property behind the parking area. I think we'll go to the vehicle turning plan. So this is the plan that I believe we saw the last time. Again, it just shows that the whole site can be accessed by a fire truck, 100-foot aerial fire truck. This was reviewed by the fire marshal, and it was signed off on. So there is full access for the site for the largest truck available in your fleet. The grading plan, which is tough to see, but I can just walk you through. What we tried to do is manage cut fills on the site by building into the grade. From the road, our access drive goes up at about 3%. The buildings are substantially as much as we can at grade. And as you move to the back of the property, the parking lot is at grade in the front and a minor 2-foot cut in the back of the parking lot. Coming through the center of the buildings, it's about 2%. You don't want to really go less than 2%, 1.5%, or else you might end up with some ponding during rainstorms. So we maintain very shallow pitch grades. We worked with the existing grades. The topography that we see substantially matches what's out there. What's more important is I had to break out the grading and drainage, of the grading and drainage plan, I had to separate them out for line work reasons so you could actually read the plan. So the stormwater management plan is actually fairly simple. There's 3 stormwater management areas. Stormwater management area A is directly behind the buildings in the parking lot. Stormwater management area B is under my cursor here in the northeast corner of the site. And stormwater management area C is just a small depression that allows infiltration for untreated, undeveloped portions of the property. So stormwater management area A is a subsurface ADS StormTech SC740, a subsurface stormwater management system. It's designed to both pre-treat and infiltrate the 100-year storm event. So all of the runoff that gets into this subsurface system here, the runoff contributing to this system is both of the buildings are routed to the subsurface system, and a portion of the parking lot, if you can follow my cursor here, portion of that parking lot is routed to that subsurface system. Again, those have isolator rows, 3 separate isolator rows, one of the isolator rows for the northern building, separate isolator row for the southern building, and another isolator row for the parking lot. And that allows for pre-treatment. An isolator row is just a row of chambers that's wrapped in fabric that allows treatment of sediments, removal of oils and grease, and the like. And then after it infiltrates through the fabric, it's designed to infiltrate entirely through the 100-year storm event. So there won't be any discharge from our site through the 100-year storm event. And the reason being, we had obviously a wooded property now that didn't produce a lot of runoff. So we essentially had to meet that by infiltrating everything. So stormwater management area A and B are similar, SC740 chambers, pre-treating for the 100-year, infiltrating through the 100-year. And then stormwater management area C is just a collection basin for a portion of the property that drains essentially to the new driveway cut that we have to capture and infiltrate. So that is capturing and infiltrating grass areas through the 50-year storm event, almost the 100-year storm event. There is a yard drain that collects the 0.01 feet of water that goes over the top of the 100-year storm event, and it routes it to stormwater management area B, which allows for additional attenuation and detention. For an emergency overflow event, if it's a 500-year storm event or there's a backup or there's a break or something like that, there's an emergency conveyance system that discharges to this location here, a flared end section with a riprap apron. Again, that is strictly emergency. We're not actually showing any discharge from our stormwater management systems. And we are showing through the 100-year storm event infiltration with a design rate of 20 inches per hour. And as I mentioned, the field rates that we got were 143 inches per hour in the back system, 43.5 inches per hour on the front system. So I think it's oversized for what it is, but I think there's a lot of factors of safety built into that stormwater management system. Utilities, as I mentioned, water is available in Henkel Way, so we are proposing to connect to the water line in Henkel Way. Sanitary sewer, there's a deep sewer line in Brook Street. Unfortunately, that doesn't come up in through Henkel Way, so we are routing our sanitary sewer line from our buildings out to Henkel Way to connect to the existing sanitary sewer main. Electric telephone cable are available in Henkel Way, which will be connecting from Henkel Way into our site. What you can't see at this scale is we show 2 transformers, 1 for each building, generally in this location here. We've tried to have conversations with Eversource. They really only want to review plans during construction to move things around, but we do have a letter from them that it's satisfactory. We reached out, Metropolitan District Commission they oversee and the service provider for the water and the sewer. We reached out to them. They, like everybody, they are very busy right now. I did speak to the director over there, and originally he was thinking this would be an agreement, a developer's permit agreement, I think it was, which would be an extension of the sewer main. So we submitted that application in May to them. When I spoke to him 2 weeks ago, he said, we're just going to treat it as a house connection, which is actually good for us. It just says that rather than a sewer main, it's a sewer lateral, which is just something that they have to review. They were looking at the capacity analysis. We still don't have a letter from them, unfortunately, but based on our conversation, by changing it from a main to a lateral, but we don't see any issues. Soil erosion and sediment control. We do have silt fence shown along the entire down gradient limit of our disturbance. We also have temporary soil stockpile areas in the back of the property here. Construction entrance coming from Henkel Way. 2 temporary sediment traps shown that are sized to treat the runoff that is coming towards these sediment traps. Each of these catch basins in Henkel Way that are in the proximity of our development, and each catch basin on the property will also have a trap inside the catch basins to trap any sediment. And lastly, we have temporary diversion swales shown. You can't see at the scale, however, temporary diversion swales shown that would direct any runoff into those temporary sediment traps. With that, I think we might be turning it over to Mark. I just wanted to close in saying that, unfortunately, we don't have comments from town staff yet. I did speak to the fire marshal, who was fantastic to work with so far, and I believe he has signed off on the project. With that being said, our site is developed best management practices to infiltrate everything. There are no public health or safety or environmental concerns with our proposed development that we know of at this moment. Of course, we're still waiting for comments, but I don't foresee really any otherworldly comments that should come from this. So with that, I think I'll pass it off to Mark.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mark Vertucci. I'm a senior transportation engineer at Fuss & O'Neill. We're located at 146 Hartford Road in Manchester. I'm also a registered professional engineer in Connecticut and a registered professional traffic operations engineer as well. Fuss & O'Neill did prepare a traffic impact study for this proposed development, and I just want to briefly describe our findings here for you. Again, just to orient you to the site, site location and the proposed driveway will be located on the westerly side of Henkel Way. The driveway will be about 250 feet north of the Brook Street intersection. So as far as our study intersections in the traffic study, we did take a look at that Hankel Way, Brook Street intersection, which is an all-way stop control intersection. We also reviewed Hankel Way at Capitol Boulevard, also an all-way stop controlled intersection. And we reviewed impacts at, let me go back here, the Capitol Boulevard West Street intersection, and that's a signalized intersection. So we did conduct turning movement traffic counts on April 4th during the morning and afternoon peak periods at each of those intersections. The counts revealed the peak hours are 7:45 to 8:45 in the morning and 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon. So those are the hours, the highest traffic hours of the day, so we analyzed those hours as part of the study. We did grow those counts to the 2024 design year, which is what we expect will be the build year. We used 0.6% growth factor, which was provided by the DOT. Now, as far as traffic generation from this site, we did utilize the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual to calculate what we expect the site will generate for traffic. This is an industry-accepted resource for determining traffic generation. For this type of development, we utilize Land Use Code 221, multifamily housing mid-rise. And for the 96 units proposed, the manual projects we will generate 36 trips in the morning peak hour and 38 trips in the afternoon peak hour. So we took that traffic, we added it to our 2024 baseline volumes to obtain our 2024 build or combined condition volumes, and we conducted a capacity analysis at each of our 3 study intersections. Once we did the analysis, we compare the the background 2024 baseline analysis to the 2024 build analysis, and we looked for any impacts. And what we found was each of the study intersections today operate efficiently at level of service B, and with the addition of the site-generated traffic, there will be no changes or deterioration in level of service at any of those intersections. From a safety perspective, we did review intersection site distances from the site driveway. We measured them, and the measured sight lines do meet or exceed DOT Highway Design Manual criteria. Therefore, the site driveway will allow for safe passenger car egress from the site. And lastly, we did review crash history. We reviewed the latest 3 years of available crash data from the Yukon crash repository for each of the 3 study intersections. There were no abnormal crash frequencies identified within the study area, and no identifiable crash patterns that could be exacerbated by the additional development traffic. So overall, the conclusion of our traffic study was that the minimal traffic generated by this proposed residential development will not have a detrimental impact to traffic operations or safety within the study area. With that, I am going to turn it back to Andrea, and I think she'll wrap things up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. For the record, again, Andre Gomes, counsel for the applicants. Mr. Chairman, I think I'll keep my closing comments short, not only because the commission has been so patient while we're running through all our details, but also just to make it clear to the commission heard, we're still waiting for town staff comments, and we are waiting for commentary from the MDC as well. So we're going to be asking the commission to continue the public hearing to its next meeting so that we can hopefully, again, and I believe Mr. Sopelak did inform Mr. Moran that he doesn't anticipate any major issues, but we'd like to see those comments, review them, respond to them, and hopefully receive confirmation from MDC that, again, we have a lot of verbal okays, but we want to ensure that we're closing the loop on all of these issues. So with that being said, and understanding that we'll be back next month, I'll just note a couple of things. Generally speaking, I think this application checks a number of boxes for the commission and for the town of Rocky Hill. You're taking a vacant site in a fairly developed area that's transitional in nature in terms of uses, and you're inserting a sustainable, energy-efficient multifamily community that will provide Rocky Hill residents with the diverse, affordable housing that it needs. If that could be my elevator speech for every application, my job would be a lot easier, but I say that in all honesty here. There are no health or safety issues with the proposed plan. You heard from Mr. Levy about the safety of the building, and how everything is built so that it's code compliant. Mr. Moran on all of the measures taken to ensure that the site is operating at tip-top shape, and of course from Mr. Vertucci on the traffic and the safety presented here. Moreover, as I mentioned earlier, Vessel's plan furthers a number of goals in both the town's plan of conservation and development and its affordable housing plan. We list out some of the goals in our letter. I'm not going to go through them all, but I'll just note that the POCD recognizes that Rocky Hill does have a diverse housing stock in terms of the number of multifamily units. But again, Josh touched on this. This is a nationwide problem, unfortunately, and it's prevalent here in Rocky Hill as well. A lot of the units were built in the 1970s, so they're not meeting today's housing needs. They're obsolete. On the same page, the POCD specifically recognizes the need for affordable housing. That's at page 58. The affordable housing plan itself, I'll just provide one quote to the commission before I close. It outlined the following goal, quote, continue to provide for a variety of housing options throughout Rocky Hill to expand housing options and choices and help meet the housing needs of households of all ages, sizes, incomes, and characteristics. And that is directly in line with Vessel's plan and its mission as a company. So for all these reasons, we will be asking for the commission's approval at the next public hearing, of course. But for now, I will stop there, and I will open up, of course, the team, myself included, for any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you. If we can raise the screen, please. Okay. First of all, I just want to, housekeeping, just want to make sure who is seated. So it's myself, Commissioner Zarelli, Commissioner Glico, Commissioner Hose, and Commissioner Robbins. So they are the seated commissioners. I would like to open the public hearing to the members of the public who would like to address to the commission on this proposal.
Don't rush. There are people. Cool.
So I'd like to thank the commission for the time to address them. I'm speaking on behalf of Henkel of America. My name is Robert McNamee. I'm the Chief Legal Officer there for North America. With me is Tony Femps. He's the Facilities Manager for the building that we have at 1 Henkel Way, which is just up the road and across from the proposed site. We have an interest in this application. We are the largest parcel within this office park at 57 acres. We've been there for 29 years. Currently, we have 450 employees that are there, and unlike some companies, we brought all those employees back after the pandemic to make sure they were sort of back in the office and participating in the Rocky Hill community. So we've heard a little bit about the future. We've heard a lot about the future. I want to talk a little bit about the past. From a past standpoint, we have been, I think, a very good citizen of the town of Rocky Hill as a company, going back well before my time. We are probably a top 10, maybe top 15 taxpayer in Rocky Hill on the Grand List. Not only have we been here for 29 years, 15 years ago, we transferred our corporate headquarters for the United States to the town of Rocky Hill. We have 60 facilities nationwide. We have 5 facilities within Connecticut, and we chose Rocky Hill and have been very happy with that choice. We also, from a little bit of a, I think, history standpoint, and the thing that I'm most proud of being there is we don't just pay our taxes, we provide sort of things to the community. And we make voluntary donations in the thousands of dollars to the Parks and Rec, to the police department here, to the VFW. So I'm here to express some concerns. And we have 4 concerns. I'm pleased to hear that the public hearing will be continued before a decision is made, and I'm hoping that it gives certainly us some time to look into that, gather some additional information, maybe the commission and maybe the applicants as well to do that. So let me outline those 4, and certainly I'd be happy to take any questions about them. So the first concern I have is around the safety piece of it. And I know that there's been an expert here that's addressed safety, but let me kind of drill down a little bit on what my concern is. This is an office park. This is not a residential area. And there are certain characteristics of this park that are different from a normal neighborhood. And the one thing that I didn't see in the traffic study, and it may be in there, is what type of vehicles are we talking about? So we have a loading dock. We, at our facility, have tractor trailers that come up and deliver a lot. If you go just across the street from this facility, Burris Logistical has a huge fleet of tractor trailer trucks, and that's a different type of traffic. And especially with much more traffic in that particular area, I think those tractor trailers are going to present more of a problem than you might see if you just assumed those were regular cars. The second concern that we have has to do with something that the chairman raised on the application on Main Street on this when it came to amenities. And we had some personal concerns about this. I was happy to hear there may be some amenities added. I'll leave it up to the commission to decide whether a couple of picnic tables and a few birdhouses is what the commission had in mind. But let me tell you sort of what we struggle with a little bit on the lack of amenities. We have put significant amount of investment into our One Henkel Way site, and we've done that partly to make it a great place to look at, but more importantly, a great place for our employees to come back. And that was critical, bringing them back after the pandemic. We have a softball field that was just redone. We have a soccer field. We have a 1-mile walking track. And we've just upgraded a couple of basketball courts and tennis courts there. We do not have a fence around our facility. And with 100 apartments at that size, I'm not sure that the picnic tables and the birdhouses are going to keep everyone there. So we're going to have, I think, an increased level of traffic on our property. We've got liability concerns for that. The folks that use it, our own employees, not only is that a benefit for them, but they also go through getting a doctor's note so we know if they use that stuff that they're going to be okay. We don't have any way to control that right now. So I know that will be a problem, and we're going to be sort of forced to try and deal with that problem, which will be an expense. And there may also be an additional expense sort of on the services of the town if we do have significant trespassing. The next thing I want to talk about is the wetlands area. And this is not an area of my expertise. I know that we heard that no construction will happen 100 feet up from the wetlands area. We are literally downstream from those wetlands areas. And if I look at just the map, the edge of that building on that 100 feet is very, very close. And I'm not sure how you can build a building that close and not be over that 100 feet portion. I'm not suggesting that there's not been a lot of work done, but I wonder if the applicants have gone to the Wetlands Commission in a sense of precaution to make sure that that's not an issue. And I think that just drawing the 100 feet was a way not to do that, but I would feel a lot more comfortable if there's more of a distance between that building and the 100 feet, or that the wetlands who have expertise in this area were able to take a look at it. And then last, but not least, looking into the future for us, we have a 57-acre parcel. And we purchased that parcel before because we may want to expand in that area. And there are plans, if we want to bring more people there. We have 5 facilities in Connecticut. It may be that, you know, changes may happen in the future on that piece of it. We had zero concern in an office park if we wanted to provide more buildings. If we provide more buildings and it's across from 100 units with people and children and that, I think we're going to get more pushback despite how it's zoned right now. So those are the 4 concerns we have. Again, I'm not up here saying we are in strident opposition to this, and I really want to hear the commission to know none of these concerns have anything to do with the affordable housing aspect of it. If these were luxury apartments, we would be raising the exact same 4 concerns. So I don't know, Tony, if there's anything else you want to say. Tony's here. He's got more expertise about the facility. So if anyone in the commission has any questions for me, I can try and answer them, or Tony can certainly help.
I have a question about the 114 parking spaces. Will on-street parking be allowed in this area? Because the 96 units, are they for single occupancy or double, 2 people?
I think you can pose a question, and then when the
Okay, so I have a
applicant.
question about
Right.
the 114 parking spaces. I don't see how that could be enough.
So maybe, Chairman, the easiest would be, let's say we have 5 and add the parking space to that as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public would like to address the commission on this proposal? Seeing none?
We do have correspondence.
Yes,
Did you want to go over that?
yes, please, yeah.
Okay, one moment. And just so the commission knows, for the record, I did give a copy to Attorney Gomes via email today.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Just trying to find it here. It was on the table.
Kim, I have a copy here if you'd
Is
like.
it the one from
I have it. Yep.
E. Maria?
Yes.
You have it.
I received an email dated today. It is from Luke E. DiMaria, owner, Brooklawn Funeral Home, 511 Brook Street here in Rocky Hill, regarding site plan 125 Henkel Way, to whom it may concern. I apologize for not attending the meeting this evening. I will be out of the country. I will gladly attend the next meeting. I've had discussions with the property development team and have asked for a few simple terms to be added to any proposed site plan. Per conversations with the developers, they would provide in writing a provision of 2 items which concern me as a surrounding property owner. Please see below. No less than an 8 to 12-foot high fence and evergreen trees as a barrier on the adjacent property line of the funeral home, lining the complete border of the property. They are also willing to allow continued use of the parcel of land for overflow parking on the Brook Street Henkel Way corner of grass that I've maintained for over 25 years. In addition, I believe adornment of the pond on the north side of this property could enhance the entire Corporate Ridge development. It's a natural pond that just needs cleaning up. None of these proposals would constitute vast expenses, but will appease my concerns and provide a curb appeal to the area.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Again, for the record, Andre Gomes, counsel for the applicants. If I may, I'll kind of start backwards because that's just the way my notes were written. I'll address Mr. DiMaria's letter first. Mr. Levy, and I certainly won't speak for him, he can jump in if he needs to. Mr. Levy did call Mr. DiMaria. I believe Commissioner Zarrilli, I think you had asked about contacting the funeral home director, or owner, excuse me, to discuss impacts. Again, I'll look to Mr. Levy, but overall, the conversation was positive. There was discussion about the overflow parking and just general information provided. There was absolutely no request on the call for a fence, correct? Just the record reflect Mr. Levy's nodding in agreement. So there was no request for a fence, so we were taken a little bit aback here about the request for a fence. Commission will remember, and you can see some of it from the views of the property, the perspectives. There's a dense tree line area abutting the funeral home's property. So number one, to put a fence makes no sense is the conclusion I'm getting to. Number one, we'd have to clear out trees in order to put the fence, which would mean we'd actually be decreasing the screening and buffer that's already naturally provided on site. And number two, the grading is such the funeral home sits up higher than the southern portion of our property. And so the provision of a fence, even a 12-foot fence, as Mr. DiMaria suggests, would still mean that people in the parking lot could look right over the fence. We'd have to build essentially a giant wall and clear trees. A fence makes no, I hate that this rhymes, I apologize. A fence makes no sense here. So that was not part of the discussion. But overall, we understood that Mr. DiMaria, I don't speak for him, of course, but we understood that he was in favor of the application or had no concerns other than what he listed here. Going backwards on the comments provided by members of the public, Henkel of America specifically, there was a question regarding on-street parking. Again, I'll remind the commission that we're providing we're providing 116 spaces plus the 2 loading areas that are in front of each building. One kind of as you go around that rotary that's right in front of the building. There is more than enough parking for the 91 bedroom units and the 6 2-bedroom units that are provided in this community. We well exceed the state standard in Public Act 2129. That being said, we don't believe that there is street parking on Henkel Way. It's not signed one way or another, but we will take a look at that and provide the commission with a more appropriate answer for the next public hearing. Commission may recall my statement, this may have come up during the pre-application. The applicant is entitled to a legal presumption that it will comply with the law. So saying that people may disregard the law and park on the street, if that is in fact the case here, if you're not allowed to park on Henkel Way, that is not a valid basis for denial. It is speculative, and the commission can almost understand how that could snowball if that were legally permitted. So we will take a look at the on-street parking. Just keep in mind we're providing a lot of parking on site for what we're proposing, well in excess of the state standard. And in fact, the state standard is such that the commission cannot require more parking. So I'll leave it at that for parking. Regarding wetlands, before we submitted even the pre-application with the commission, I believe that Mr. Levy met with town staff on site, correct? Did you, not on site, oh, excuse me. Mr. Levy corrected me, met with town staff to discuss the impacts. And as the commission knows, I know that is not this commission, but the Wetlands Commission has jurisdiction 100 foot outside of the wetlands. That's why we call it the upland review area. And if there is no work being proposed in the wetlands or in the upland review area, and there is no work being proposed just outside of it that would impact that area, the Wetlands Commission has no jurisdiction. So following, again, the logic here, we had town staff sign off on that early on in the process as we were developing the site plans, and we were all in agreement, which is precisely why the site has been designed as it has been, because we want to protect that wetland.
And Andrea, if I may just, so for
Absolutely.
the commission's clarification, when she says town staff, yes, it was planning and zoning and engineering staff. Steve Sopelak is the town's wetland agent, so
Correct.
he's the one that provided it.
Correct. It was not Ms. Ricci, and in fact, Kim, I think it may have been
When I was away.
Bob. No, Bob had
Bob at the
retired.
time?
It was not Bob. Oh, it was Steve Sopelak. Okay, but you also spoke, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman, you also spoke with Bob Alvarado's replacement, whose name?
Dave.
Dave Palmberg. Excuse me, I have not had the pleasure of meeting him yet, but Mr. Palmberg also reviewed and weighed in on the wetlands aspect of this. Regarding, again, we talked about the amenities and the concern, understandably, of Henkel of America that the residents or guests of our community would trespass onto their site. I go right back to, and I say this respectfully, I go right back to the presumption that we're entitled to, which is that our applicants, us as applicants and our tenants will comply with the law, and you can't trespass on private property. So that shouldn't be a concern here either. And then overall, the safety regarding the loading dock with tractor trailers. Yes, this is in the OP zoning district, and I can go back to the zoning regulations and check. The OP zoning district does allow certain residential uses via special permit and site plan. There are also a number of residential uses in the area. Lots of single-family homes to the east. You have Altera to the west along Brook Street. Simply stating that there are tractor trailers that may come by in the area is not a valid safety concern. It's speculative. And again, I say this with all due respect, but this is just what our case law tells us, particularly in with respect to 830G. And then, of course, the fourth concern, and I will just state to the commission, we are more than happy to provide more comprehensive responses and even to have a discussion with Henkel of America to address their concerns. These are just some preliminary responses. The concern about Henkel of America potentially expanding, well, with all due respect, that's not before the commission at this time. And if the commission were looking at each application and thinking about what might happen in the future, that's legally inappropriate and speculative, particularly in an 830G application. Even if this were a special permit, it would be inappropriate, but particularly in an 830G. So those are our initial responses. I will be in contact with Henkel of America, happy to have a conversation with both of you. Certainly Mr. Levy, I'm sure, feels the same, but I'll stop there and then I'll open it up to the commissioners if they have any questions that we can answer as well.
Yeah, so I'll go through commissioners. Commissioner Zurelli?
In the past, you guys talked about an on-site manager or Vessel University, and can you take us through that component? Is that going to exist on this? And is there going to be a point of contact on site for the 96 units?
Absolutely, Commissioner, and I apologize. We did address that, I think, in our letter, but not during our presentation. I'm going to actually ask Mr. Levy, who knows about the community caretaker, to address your question.
Hi, Josh Levy for Vessel. So the questions were, will we have the caretaker model who is supported by Vessel, trained by Vessel on site? Yes, absolutely. And our typical model is yes, that they would be somebody who both is from the community and ideally would be living on site as well. That's the goal.
Would you consider one for both buildings or one for the entire facility?
Probably for a building of this size, probably one for the whole facility. It's just not required for a building of this size typically. A couple of other comments just in terms of the comments from Henkel Corporation. A couple things to note. It sounds like one of the questions that they had associated with the wetland was concern over flooding or something like that, an impact to the streams. As Mr. Moran pointed out.
If you can address to the commission,
sorry.
please.
As Mr. Moran pointed out, all of the water runoff on the site is handled by our existing stormwater management system, which will take care of all of the water, even in an example of a 100-year flood. So there will be no water runoff, even in a 100-year flood situation, which means that there's going to be no impact to any surrounding areas from any water runoff from our property in any case, and that's assuming a factor of 20 in terms of the infiltration, where the actual infiltration numbers under the geotech report are more than 2 times, and in some cases 7 times higher than the number that we're using to calculate the needs for stormwater management. And just another note in terms of proximity. The board is quite aware of this. You know your neighborhood way better than I do. But the single family homes along Brook Street actually back up to the Henkel Way property, which is about a mile from our site, a little bit more, and up gradient. So it's quite a far distance from where their tractor trailers and other things that are operating within the building will be nowhere near our property. I, for one, have been at the property more than a dozen times at various times of day to make sure that there's no noise or other issues that would impact our tenants, because that's obviously a major concern for us in terms of their well-being, and have never encountered anything that would be an issue in terms of the operation of the building or the enjoyment of our tenants, but also the fact that the people along Brook Street who are in single-family homes are equally as close to the Henkel building and on top of the amenities that they provided, which are quite beautiful. We also would be happy to, as Ms. Gomes pointed out, we'd be happy to meet with the folks that were here tonight, talk about their concerns, address their concerns. One of the things we'll certainly do is send out a message to all of our tenants that makes them aware that they are not entitled to use any amenities that are not on our property or that are on somebody else's property. That, of course, should go without saying, but nevertheless reminding people of things is something we're happy to do so that there's no concern that somebody else would not understand the provision of amenities on another person's site. I think that's it for, happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you.
On your photometric plan, you show solar-powered lighting. Can you take us through, is this lighting electric lights with just solar backup, or can you just take us through the photometric part of this?
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Moran discuss it in more depth, but yes, they are solar lights, and they're 100% solar, not connected to the grid at all. They're commercial solar lighting that has backup power associated with them, so that they can always operate, regardless of the amount of light you've got in that day in terms of operation. But Mr. Moran will give you a more technical approach to it as opposed to my layman's approach.
Thank you, Seamus Moran. So that hit it on the head. They're solar panel, there's solar lights with a solar fixture on the top with a battery that connected to the solar panel, so that way if it is a cloudy day, it still accepts light, and it has a battery that allows it to charge and provide luminance, allows for light from the fixture. But it's not connected, it's not routed, there's no electrical to the light.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is that as you are a proponent to enhance the affordable housing in the community, so is this commission. So would you consider more than 29 units in your proposal? Maybe round up to 30? I just throw that out as a suggestion and a question. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll evaluate that, of course, as a team, and I think I explained to the commission, I keep saying last time with the prior application, statute only requires the 30%. That's how developers underwrite their properties, but we will certainly evaluate that and get back to the commission on that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Glico?
I got a couple questions. In reviewing the detail here, I just had a couple questions. I couldn't find it, or maybe I just overlooked it. You're showing electric station charging for handicap as well as regular cars.
Correct.
Do you have a detail of how that's powered or what the equipment is?
I'll ask
Is there gonna
Mr.
be,
Moran.
I guess my main concern, is there going to be a transformer alongside it?
I'll ask Mr. Moran to weigh in on that, Commissioner.
That's a good question. Eversource, they'll dictate where it goes. That was one of the questions we asked Eversource, if we want to have those separately metered, if that has to have a separate transformer, but they weren't able to answer that yet. I'm sure we'll get to that point. If there's a transformer with routing right from that transformer to the EV stations, that's probably the route I would expect it to go, but I don't know yet from Eversource.
So then I guess the question would be the transformers would be in front of the property.
Right now, we have the transformers shown where they're shown, near the front of the property. I'm not sure if Eversource is going to ask us to move those, but
Okay, so the transformers you're showing there, those are for the buildings?
Correct.
Is there going to be additional ones for the EV stations?
I'm not sure
Okay.
until Eversource tells us.
And Commissioner, just to weigh in on that, as you undoubtedly know, we're in a catch-22 with other entities. They won't review our plans and give us direction until we get local zoning approval, and we can't get local zoning. It's a catch-22, so we'll get more direction from Eversource, unfortunately.
So the existing transformers obviously are going to be screened,
The new transformers, you
the
mean?
the ones you're showing on the plan.
Do we have, I'm not sure what's shown on the landscaping plan, but I do believe we have some landscaping between, I guess there's no landscaping shown around there, but we can screen them if that's desired.
We'll look into the screening, Commissioner.
You stated that the utilities, Eversource, is coming off of Hinkle Way because they have services there, but you're also showing a new pole being placed on Hinkle Way. And if is that was
Correct.
pre?
So that was
Eversource?
pre-conversation with Eversource.
Okay.
I didn't see, I looked at Google Earth, and I didn't
reason-
see three-phase power.
It
coming
is.
down Henkel.
Right, because there's no poles except for light poles on it.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So I mistook that as there is not primary. I didn't see transformers. I just saw light poles. I didn't see three-phase power. So I came off of Brooks, and Eversource told me we can pull from Henkel Way.
Okay. there's an easement in the south side of the property which calls out park identification sign. You didn't show a detail for a signage of your property. And has there been any discussions with the park association if there's ever going to be a sign put there?
I'll look to Mr. Levy, Commissioner.
No, we haven't spoken to them.
If you can,
Oh, I'm sorry. We had not spoken to them about whether they were ever going to put a sign there. We didn't anticipate using that area for our sign, so we didn't view that as an issue one way or another. It's their right to put a sign there in the future if they choose to.
Okay. And you don't have a detail of your sign?
We don't have a detail of it yet, but if it were desirable, we could create
Well,
a
I
detail.
just-
Yeah.
Just to put it in perspective, like where it's going to be.
Oh, yeah, I think we,
Let's see, I had one more question.
Commissioner, I believe Mr. Moran, there's a tentative location for a sign located or called out on the plan.
yeah.
It's hard to read this plan since
It's always hard to read in this scale, but it's at the entry point to the development near where before you get to the circle, so that it's at the front of the property there,
Okay.
on the right-hand side of the driveway.
Yep, the north.
All right, and I guess the last question is for staff. I was trying to look in, I couldn't find anything. Do we have restrictions on heights of fences? Isn't it 6 feet is the limit?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We do.
Okay,
Correct.
so that answers that question. All right.
And Commissioner, at 6 feet, just to put it in perspective, I think what the grading difference is, Mr. Moran's looking at, I think you'd be looking right over that fence. It would provide absolutely no screening, and you'd have to remove trees.
Right, so that brings me back to the sewer shows it going through where you said you wouldn't disturb any trees, but it's showing it going from Brook Street right through
Correct.
the property that Luke requested to continue to usage of.
Correct. So the only sewer is out in Brook Street. So
Right, you
we're-
said extremely deep.
It's about 12 feet deep, but we need that depth actually because the elevation is higher in the street.
Yes, right.
So we're working against the grade. So it's about 2.5 feet of cover, I believe, at the buildings with, I think it's 12 or 13 feet at the road.
Okay.
Because we're working against the grade, but we will have to go through the woods to trench to get it in there, but we're not planning to clear in order to do that.
So you're gonna cut like a 15-foot cut through there?
Yes. Almost at the road, where it's clear, going against the grade, obviously, as the grade climbs and our sewer is dropping, we're, like I said, it's
Right.
2.5 feet at the building and 15 feet, so somewhere at the tree line, it's about 7 feet.
Commissioner, I'd look at, I think it's slide 4 from the PowerPoint. There's, you know the site. You
Yeah, no,
probably drive that all
I'm
the
not
time.
worried about the depth. I was worried
The
about
tree- the
how
street-
much
tree
you're gonna
clearing.
clear to bring the sewer through there.
Right, so what I'm saying, Commissioner, is I think Mr. Moran just indicated that it'll be closer to the road. So if you look at it's closer to the road, right?
Yeah, so there's some of that area where he's parking his vehicles is already cleared.
Yeah.
So that is where the deepest cut will be.
Okay.
And then we're working, there's a stretch of trees in between our development and that clearing that we'll be cutting through, of course. That will, I'm not sure, I don't have a scale, and you can't scale this anyway. But, yeah, we'll be cutting through there, and maybe it's somewhere between 7 and 10 feet deep.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about the depth. I was worried about how much you were gonna have to clear to get equipment
Okay.
through there to put the sewer in. So that's approximately 15 to 20 feet
Of width for the clearing?
width, right?
Okay.
I don't think someone's running along the street, right?
No, it's coming right through, but I guess whatever we have to do to clear in order to get the sewer in.
Like.
So you're concerned about screening, Commissioner, is where
Right.
we're removing the trees. We'll look at, and we'll get a little bit more details into what would be needed to install sewer in that area
Okay.
and how it will impact the trees. And if we need to provide additional screening, we're happy to do that. But let us take a look, because I think we're
Yeah.
hypothesizing on size and depth and location. So let us look and get back to you on that for the next hearing.
Commissioner Isaac?
Yeah, I do have a question. I know, Attorney Gomes, I know you said it was pretty dense between this parcel and Brooklawn Funeral Home. I know it's just a rendering, but one of the renderings that you had, it really didn't look that dense, and maybe that's just kind of a depiction of, you're more looking at the building itself and not necessarily the foliage there. I think it's actually the last picture. You can kind of see through the trees. I'm assuming you were just kind of focusing on the building per se, because you can see the side of the building from the corner of Brook Street in that picture. So I'm assuming it's just a kind of a rendering of, it's not an actual depiction of actual trees that are there.
So Commissioner, I will note, we did what we could, again, taking a note from the commission at the last meeting to appropriately show the landscaping that we're proposing across the site frontage. I believe it was you, Commissioner, who had asked for a perspective that matched our landscaping plan. So we did that here. In terms of the tree covering, I think if you look at the fourth perspective, the zoomed out aerial, if you will, you can see a little bit better that surrounding the funeral home, there's actually a pretty good tree cover there. And it's really only that last page. You're standing more at the Brook Street Henkel Way intersection where it looks a little bit more sparse. That being said, you're absolutely correct, Commissioner. This isn't an exact depiction of the trees on site. It was just, I think what we did was take a Google Street View from Brook Street, looking kind of northwest. So it's probably more dense than what you see there.
Okay. Having said that, can you talk about the retaining wall that is on the south side of building number 2? It peaks out at 9 foot high. You've got a low point there. So can you give us kind of relationship on, I can't really make out elevations of what the building is. I see some there, and it looks like at the funeral home, maybe he's at elevation 94, 96. Top of wall looks like it's coming out at 92. So what I'm looking at, it almost seems like your top of the retaining wall is pretty close to where the funeral home is in relation. So can you kind of go through that? It looks like you definitely have a kind of a low point there, right where the 9 foot peaks out on the wall. Do you anticipate pooling, ponding, anything going on there? Can you kind of just run through that a little bit?
Sure. So as I mentioned early on, the existing additions plan, there's a ridge line that runs east-west on our property. The northern half drains to the wetland. The southern half stays on the property and drains to a low point on our property. Also, the neighbor's property drains across to our property as well. So when we did our evaluation of the stormwater, we evaluated how much runoff is getting both to the wetland and how much water is getting to that low point on our property. And we reduced the peak rates and the volumes to both the wetland and to that point. So the amount of runoff, our site is we're developing our site, of course, and the runoff we're generating, it's not going to that low point, it's going out. So the water that's getting there now is really just from the neighboring property, and we're reducing that drainage area significantly with our proposed improvements. So there's less volume that's getting to in between our two sites.
All right, but even with the elevated parking lot up in I guess you'd call it the eastern quadrant there, and then you have gradients that roll down to that low point, would you say that kind of increases in a volume of area that water can kind of sit there and get trapped there?
Maybe I
So
misunderstood the question.
the proposed parking lot.
Yep.
To the left of that, so to the west of that, you've got more gradients that are kind of dropping to that low point, the lowest point that you'd have at the bottom of that retaining wall.
Sure.
So it almost seems like, I understand what you're saying about everything naturally flowing, but it seems like you're almost increasing the potential for water to accumulate there, and it's kind of trapped in that area. I don't know if there's anything you looked at in terms of trying to mitigate anything in that location?
So the way we did that was by capturing everything and redirecting it away from there. We're not directing, none of our improvements are getting to that point. I know I'm probably beating the dead horse, but the parking area that we're talking about, it's all, even the walkway that's there is pitched back into the parking lot. So the runoff that's getting there that was previously wooded area where the parking lot is, that was getting into that low spot, that's being redirected north now. The area that is draining to that low point, I don't have the full report with me, but it's a significantly reduced drainage area, so the volumes are less and the peak rates are less. It's not creating more volume.
Okay.
I think that's
It's
the question.
improving existing conditions.
To just try to say it from a layman's perspective, you would think that if you put a parking lot there and the water was being directed to that area, that you'd be creating more downgrade stream for purposes of collection of that water, which is what you're asking. But because you're pitching the parking lot the opposite way, it's almost as if you were, if anybody who's ever done a shower in their house, where your shower floor is actually pitched in towards the drain, so that the water's going towards the drain. The parking lot is actually done the same way, so that the water is pitching towards the collection basin there, so no water goes that other direction to avoid what you're concerned about.
Yeah, no, I understand on the impervious coverage, I get that. But when you're talking about flow to the west side of that parking lot, so, Mr. Levy, I understand what you're saying on the parking lot aspect of it. I'm just referring to the other side, the west side of that parking lot.
So the grass vegetated area. west of the
Correct.
parking
The vegetative area, that's where you're increasing that flow that's going to collect at that point. How much it'll be, I don't know. That's more your expertise. But just by looking at where the wall is, with what could potentially catch in that area, it looks more than what it previously is now. So I don't know if you took that into account. And having said that, with building a wall that peaks out at 9 feet, how much disturbance do you have? And does that reflect what Mr. DiMaria was referring to in terms of, are you wiping out all of the vegetation almost up to the corner of his property to do that work with the wall? We don't know, is it a concrete wall? Is it segmental wall? Not sure how much room you need to erect the wall with the additional fence on top of the wall. So there's just no details on it, so I can't really.
I think there's a detail on one of the sheets. It is a modular block wall. Those are usually hand-placed, and they're not too deep. They're just a gravity wall. They're stepped back slightly, each of the blocks. But you're correct, we are grading and we are improving very close to the property line in there. So we are removing trees close to our property line. I'm not hiding that.
Yeah.
But there's a gap between where, not our property, but it's the neighbor's property. There's a dense tree line between his parking lot, which then slopes down to our site.
Yeah.
That his parking lot is higher in elevation than that low spot. So as
Yeah.
you mentioned, it's about 96 for his parking lot.
It makes sense, as long as there's still density with that, with the foliage there. I understand.
And then, so just to close out your comment, I think what was there now, or what is there now, is a vegetated slope that's draining, a bigger vegetated slope draining to this pool, this bowl, essentially, to the bottom of the
Yep.
bowl. And that bowl is just getting much smaller we're eliminating the rim of that bowl and redirecting it elsewhere. But I understand, to your point, actually, and with high infiltrating soils, I think it might behoove us to maybe put a crushed stone, rather than topsoil, if we were to put almost like a crushed stone bed at the bottom that almost acts as a wick, that allows any water that pools in there to get to the underlying.
Some type of
surface.
dry well in that manner, yep.
Exactly.
Yep, I understand. Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Commissioner, just to make the record
Yes.
clear, we'll take a look at the options and everything for
Fine.
next time and
Yep.
provide
Great, thank you.
a better answer.
Commissioner Morales?
These guys are good. They covered all my questions, especially one of my important ones was the, excuse me, was the on-site contact, so that a person will be living on the site that will be basically the, I don't want to say maintenance person, but
Like a property manager, I think,
Right,
the
property
community
manager.
caretaker.
Good point, yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify that I believe that the ideal scenario, right, Mr. Levy, the ideal scenario is that someone is living on site. I think that's what Mr. Levy said. That's the ideal scenario. However, if we find another community caretaker that lives in Rocky Hill, the intent is to have someone in Rocky Hill who lives down the street and meets the criteria and would be a better community caretaker for the community. We would prefer not to limit it to a tenant of the building. The idea being, and I think we discussed this with the last application, the idea being that that person will be, again, akin to a property manager, who the tenant would call if a light bulb goes out or something clogs or something along those lines, and then that person would be the in-between between the resident and vessel. So I just wanted to make clear, and there's some information I believe in the commission's packet regarding this program, that the intent and the hope is that we find the perfect community caretaker and they happen to be living on site. But for obvious reasons, we don't want to limit ourselves to a resident because we want to ensure we're getting the best community caretaker possible.
So who would be actually managing the property?
Community caretaker. So
And
community
he would be
caretaker.
on call?
I'm sorry,
He
Commissioner?
would be on call, or she would be on call 24 hours a day?
He or she is on call 24 hours a day. If it is not, again, if there's a clog or something along those lines, a toilet clogs, same thing as you would do with any property manager, most of whom are not on site for the multifamily developments that I work on. Give them a call. They will then dispatch a plumber to the site. If it's something that they cannot easily handle, they will elevate it to vessels management and proceed accordingly. Same exact way you'd find any property, any community managed by a property manager.
Will there be an office where a person would be during normal working hours?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very
Will
well.
there be an office where someone will be on site during normal working hours?
I don't believe, I'm going to look at Mr. Levy, I don't believe that there's an office, but they are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Thanks, Mr. Robbins.
Did we mention anything about elevators? Are there going to
Yes.
be elevators?
Each building has one elevator that will be appropriately sized for a stretcher. I know that was Commissioner Mayor Brescia's concern. So, and I believe that's required by code anyway. And
Answer that question. In regards to the traffic study, we saw a few slides, but we haven't actually seen the actual traffic study. Would we be able to get a copy of that traffic study?
you have it, Commissioner, in your May 31st packet.
Oh, it's in the previous package?
Yeah, May 31st at tab 7 is the full study.
Okay, I'll grab that. But in addition to that, in the study, did it take into consideration the physical characteristics of the types of traffic that are in that area? Based on the fact that it is an office park, and we do have an increased amount of truck traffic. And if not, could we do that?
I'm going to ask Mr. Vertucci to come, because if I start opining on traffic, that's a dangerous territory. So I'll ask Mark to come up and chat on that.
All right. Yes, as I mentioned, we did count each of those 3 study intersections. So Hankel at Brook, also Hankel at Capitol Boulevard and Capitol at West. So when we do these counts, we count all types of vehicles. So there's passenger car vehicles, heavy vehicles. We count pedestrians as well. When we run the analysis, we determine what the heavy vehicle percentage is, and we apply that in the analysis. So all that was taken into account. And as I mentioned, the analysis results, those intersections are operating efficiently at a level of service B or better.
Okay, so
There's no
so
deterioration.
That information
Yep.
I'll find in the information from the.
It's kind of dug. It's kind of dug in
pre-application
the back, and the counts are in the appendix. But you can see where it's broken out by passenger cars. There's heavy vehicles, and then a combined count in there as well.
And does it take into consideration the cumulative impact of the traffic additions for developments that have just recently been approved by the commission, that along Brook Street?
Yeah, so we did reach out to the State Traffic Administration and the Planning Office, and as a result, we did include that growth rate, percentage growth rate, to add to the existing volumes, just to account for that normal traffic growth in the area.
Yeah, the other just question, and again, I don't know if it's going to come up or not, just throwing it out there. The right-hand turns off Henkel Way down Brook Street, which are going to go by that new development, which is a warehouse complex, and then intersect with traffic coming out of Burris at the intersection of Route 3 and Brook Street. I'm just wondering if we should have some data on the intersection of Route 3 and Brook Street combined with that new development and you know, in that traffic flow pattern. Because people are either gonna try to go back through the corporate park and come out on West Street, or they're gonna try to get back to the highway, go the other way. And I'm just thinking about that morning peak hour traffic trying to get on Interstate 91. They're gonna either go this way or that way. That's where you're gonna have heavier traffic.
Right, so we did choose our study intersections based on, you know, the trip generation and where the traffic's gonna be going. And as I mentioned, it's a minimal generator. So, you know, you're adding, you know, at most, anywhere from 20 to 30 cars to these intersections, and it's primarily, you know, going up Capitol towards the intersection with West Street. We're only anticipating 20% to go down to Brook Street, so that's really a handful of trips. I think we've got, you know, 4 or 5 cars we're adding to Brook Street in the peak hour. So we didn't, that's the reason we didn't go down Brook all the way over to Route 3. You know, typically, the cutoff for analyzing an intersection is if you're adding 100 trips or 50 left turns. And, you know, we're adding about 4 or 5 in the peak hour in Brook, so, that's why we just cut it off at those 3 intersections.
So what's the logic that's applied there? People are gonna wanna take the shortest route to?
Yeah, I mean, when we determine arrival departure distribution, we look at the existing traffic flow and volume in the area, and there's much more traffic on West Street, and you also have the I-91 interchange there, as you mentioned, and that's the shortest route to get there, would be to go up Capitol Boulevard and make a left on West Street to get there, as opposed to going around the other way and up Route 3.
Yeah. All right, so that's my traffic questions, and then,
Commissioner, can I just add one thing on traffic, which I'm
Sure.
going to spitball and then look at Mr. Bertucci to confirm. You asked about whether the traffic study obviously took into account existing traffic. I'll also point you, Commissioner, and the rest of the commission to the crash data that was located, because we're talking about safety here, right? So, and as Mr. Bertucci said, I believe the crash data in the area is not unusual for this type of area and this type of development. So that's another thing to consider that takes into account the existing traffic distribution and circulation. Right, Mark?
That's correct. Yeah, there was, I believe, an average of 1 crash or less at each of the 3 intersections, which is a very low rate, actually. So there were no crash patterns in the study area.
okay. All right, thank you. The other question I have, and I guess it's a combo question for, it may have to go back to Kim, but it's just with the recent developments with climate change and everything that's been going on. Kim, do you know if the town staff or the Open Space and Conservation Commission's in agreement with town staff on the current delineation that's being used for that area? Is that up to date? The wetland, because
The
things.
wetlands agent did state that this was appropriate and
Oh,
did
okay.
state that a application was not required.
Okay.
Steve Sobolak is the wetlands agent.
Okay, because I'm just seeing, within the last 2 years, I'm just seeing, I live next to a wetland, and it's been wetter than ever lately.
And Commissioner, Mr. Moran just reminded me, we flagged the wetlands. We actually had
Oh, you
some.
flagged them? Okay.
Yes, because we wanted to make sure, we didn't want any surprises
All
during
right.
the application process, so we flagged them and met with town staff, Mr. Sobolak, the wetlands agent and town engineer in advance, and he confirmed.
All right. And then the one other question I had was just, it's great you got such great permeability in the soils, which really helps. But just out of curiosity, do you know what the seasonal fluctuations in the groundwater table are? Again, it's like the previous proposal. Groundwater table was high on the other site, affects your ability for stormwater retention. Although I think you're a little bit higher this time and a lot deeper to groundwater, but just wondering what that is.
Yeah, good question. So our site, you can assume wetlands is groundwater. We're significantly higher than that. We did, I think it was 8 test pits, and I'm not sure, 6 borings maybe across the site. And in the borings 20 feet down and the test pits 8 feet down, they didn't encounter water. So in none of the information that we have, we found water, and those were done in April, I believe. Thank you. Those were done in April, so we didn't encounter any water at test pits. And on top of that, our stormwater management system, just because of the grades of everything and shallow pitches, it's not actually that deep of a system. It's an SC 740. I think it's 36 inches tall. So it's not a deep system either. So we're not that far.
So, yeah,
under.
so there's no chance that it's gonna.
No,
all right.
no, I don't think so.
And then just the last observation, it gets back to Brooklawn Funeral Home. It's just an observation. The concern there too, though, is probably that you have a dense tree cover, but it's deciduous, so it's seasonal. So when those leaves fall off, that visual barrier is gone. And the question here is there anything you can do to integrate any type of evergreens between the adjacent property owner and the building? And I know there's a feasibility issue. I hear you say there's a topographic issue. Matter of fact, the only place I can tell from I see that is the trees might have to go on their property, not yours. But it looks like in that little nook in the bend of the elbow there, that there might be an opportunity right around there to try to integrate some evergreen cover there to create a bit.
Commissioner, we'll take a closer look at that for the next hearing.
Yeah. That's all I have.
I just have a couple questions. I'm just going to go to DeMaria's letter. In that, we talked about 8 to 12 foot, and you said that was not kind of an agreement, right?
Correct. That was not, again, I was not on that call. Mr. Levy was, but that was not mentioned whatsoever on the call.
And the other one was to allow continued use of the parcel of land for overflow parking.
Yes, so I'll have Mr. Levy come up, and again, I wasn't on that conversation, but Josh, would you just explain?
Sure. Can you still see what's on the screen?
Yeah.
To the right of the funeral home over here, there's a grassy patch that he uses for overflow parking in the case of funerals. And we told him that we'd be amenable to, we're not using that area, it's not part of what we're doing, that we'd be amenable to allowing him to continue to use that, obviously, subject to legal protections for us so that we don't get held responsible if he has an accident on the property or something like that.
Okay, so you're going to work out some legal arrangements?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then the last comment was on the pond on the north side. And I don't know if in your discussion that came up, but it looks like here.
It didn't, but I think that pond is in the wetlands area.
Okay.
And so we would not be touching that pond or going anywhere near it.
Right. So there is no intention of using or encroaching or anything like that on the pond?
Not
Okay.
going to go anywhere near it. Nope,
Okay.
we don't want anything to do with that pond.
Just wanted to make sure on the record, so, yep.
Or the 100-foot upland review area.
One thing I don't see, I know we talked about it, is the rendering of relaxation area or recreational area that you have been talking about. I think it would be good to see what you have, in the back, because it's just green.
So, Mr. Chairman, it does, I understand what you're asking for. On one of the perspectives, I'd say the.
It's dark, right.
It's dark on the printout, but on the second to last page, you can see how the parking area at the rear, if you look at the park here, and I'm going to do,
Yep.
actually, we have this up. This may be a better view.
Yeah,
Yes.
So you can see at the back, you
Yep.
can see the birdhouse, then you can see the walking path that goes through those areas. And then you can't, it's hard because it's in the wooded area where you see the benches and then there's picnic tables. But we could,
We could try to provide some images. Part of the problem
Yeah.
is providing a rendering when it's a wooded area. If you do kind of an aerial, you're missing out on the woods.
No, I mean, you can just
but we could
Yeah,
draw on
we
a
could
plan.
provide some
we
on a
images.
plan.
we could
yeah.
provide, or just pictures of what we're thinking about in terms
Yep.
of the idea.
So at least what happens is later on when somebody looks at the plans, it's already on the plan showing as, you know, where the tables are or
Yep.
whatever elements you're planning to put there.
And that's on the landscape plan,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. So if you turn to the very end of our plan set, sheet LA1, at the rear, you can see the walking path. It shows that there is a 5-foot path, 6-foot benches,
Okay, yep,
two
yep,
birdhouses
Okay.
to match
Picnic-
the birdhouse in the front. But
picnic
again,
area.
a
No,
picnic
that's-
area right there. So we can
Yeah,
provide some additional.
that provides information, okay. No, that's there. And I think you heard about the other commissioners. The other thing, and I know you already mentioned, you know, that you'll work with Henkel. As you know, they have been good, you know, company for Rocky Hill. They have been there for a number of years. So I think anything you can do to address their concern when you meet with them, see, you know, for example, I mean, you talked about the legal arrangement with you know, with the other neighbor. Something like that. I think the concern about, you know, somebody may go to their property and now something happens and what happens, you know, in terms of liability and things like that. So if you have agreements, for example, and there are exhibits that has conditions like, this is where your properties are. And again, you cannot control what people will do, but I think anything you can do to provide, legal
Yeah.
protections and stuff.
And as I said, I'd be happy to do something where we even sent, like as part of our like welcome packet, we send a notice to, we provide a notice saying, to the tenants that instructing them that they're not allowed on the neighboring properties and that they shouldn't misconstrue, things they see from the street as public property, that's private property, and, that the amenities on there are only for the employees of Henkel. Quite honestly, I would hope that we end up with some of the employees from Henkel living in the building. It would seem like a good opportunity for those purposes. But definitely, we're happy to do something like that.
Yeah, so I think anything, when you discuss with them, it's.
We'll follow up
Yep.
with Henkel after the meeting, Mr. Chairman. I just will note, and the commission can still see the PowerPoint on its screens. Yep, and this is precisely what Mr. Levy was talking about when he said that the distance. This is obviously Henkel Corporation here, so we're quite a bit a ways from Henkel Corporation, and as Mr. Levy, just putting a photo to what he was discussing earlier, you have a lot of the single-family homes on Brook Street that back right up to some of these amenities. So again, in theory, the same concerns would apply to those single-family homes, and going back to the presumption we have that we'll comply. But we will have a discussion and certainly, or at least we'll reach out and then go from there and provide the commission with some more details at the next hearing.
All right, thank you. I think that's what I had. Anyone else who has any follow-up questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So to be clear, we're continuing the public hearing to the next meeting?
Yep.
Thank you. And the only thing I'll ask for is the material samples back before we leave. Oh, they're right there? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. We'll see you next month.
So we need to make a motion to continue the public hearing to August
16th.
16th,
And
in anticipation of staff comments.
As well as all
Today's- all these
all of
comments.
these other comments, and addressing with greater clarity per Attorney Gomes, the public questions.
Yes, we'll do what we typically do, Commissioners, which is provide another, I love my tabs, a tabbed package with additional information. Thank you. Have a
you.
good evening.
Need a second?
You didn't make a
I
formal
did.
motion.
I did. I made a motion to continue the public hearing.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item number, what is it? Okay, item number 2A.
2A, proposed zoning regulation amendment, Town of Rocky Hill for proposed modifications to Rocky Hill zoning regulations, sections 9C, 6, 3, and 4 concerning major and minor changes to approved plans. 9C, 6.3, minor changes in approved and assigned site plan may be approved by the town planner or other commission designee when in the discretion of the town planner or other designee, such changes do not significantly affect the overall layout, design, density, impact, or nature of the approved site plan. The town planner or other designee shall report the approval of minor changes to an approved site plan to the commission at their next regularly scheduled meeting, and the modified plan shall be signed and filed in accordance with section 9C6. Minor changes shall be included, but not limited to.
I think this is continuation, right? So, I mean,
I'm very happy I don't have to read it. Thank you very much.
So motion to come out of recess.
Motion to come out of, second.
Oh, I made the motion, I guess.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
I
So-
just want to state on the record that I was requested by Commissioner Mortenhorst to have Section 9C6 following approval, which deals with subsection 3, minor changes, and the following page, Section 4 deals with major changes. So he sent that to me by email, and I know you received it in a previous packet when we were discussing this, but that's on the table this evening as well. And we did receive a letter of correspondence. I received that late in the day today, so that's on the table also.
What I'm going to suggest is, well, we should read that into the record.
Okay.
But what I'm going to suggest is, last month, the public hearing developed into a working session, which is inappropriate for a public hearing. So I'm going to just recommend that we close the public hearing after the comment, and then when we get to the item in the agenda, discuss how we want to proceed, and then possibly, not yet, but eventually set another public hearing to discuss this, because anything we decide has to go before the public. So if no one has an objection to that, after that letter gets read into the record, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing, period.
So just a question about that. Why do we want to close it when we can continue to talk about it in a public forum and keep the meeting open? I mean, I know, do we have statutes
You
for
have
this
time
one too?
constraints, yeah, as you do for any of the other applications, yes.
So in the spirit of what you want to do, if we put this in the body of the body, can we still talk about it?
Well, what happened last month was, well, what happened in May was we discussed my original draft. People made comments, and after the comments were made, we decided that we would set a public hearing. The comments would be incorporated into what would be presented at the June public hearing. And then, rather than just comment on what was in the document, there were suggestions, well, we should do this, we should do that, we should do that, which becomes a working session, not a public hearing. A public hearing is an information session. It's not something, it's not a session to actually work out additional changes to what we were discussing.
Sure.
So that's why I'm suggesting we just, do our business tonight with then close that public hearing, this public hearing, and then when we get to the agenda item, and I'll discuss additional, yeah. Because it's inappropriate to actually work at a public hearing. It's an information session for the public and us with clarifications, but not additions or subtractions or changes.
Sure, I support
Okay.
that. I'm fine with that.
So, if
That,
you,
that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, we just got way off track.
And I think what happened is because this was town suggested changes, we just probably followed through. If it was like it was somebody who was presenting,
Right,
it would have been
because-
different thing.
Because, right, the
It
draft was presented by a
by
member of the commission,
town,
not by
right.
an
So
applicant.
that he got probably carried away.
So,
Okay, with that said, I received an email late this afternoon from Jacqueline Kirby from One Belden Lane, Rocky Hill Planning and Zoning Commission, regarding public hearing continued from June 21, 2023, item 2A. I'm requesting that this letter be read at tonight's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting since I am unable to attend the public hearing. I wish to highlight my concerns over the proposed zoning amendment modification section as referenced above. This proposal creates a mechanism whereby an applicant who wishes to make a major change in an existing plan is required to submit a formal amendment to the commission. Accordingly, if approved by the commission, this amendment then becomes a permanent part of the Town of Rocky Hill zoning regulations, and so impacts all future actions at the affected site. As an example, there is a possibility for admission for loophole action such as can happen under the major change provision 9 capital C 64 small b, which lists inclusion of, quote, increased number of parking spaces, location of parking or dimensions of individual parking spaces, end of quotes, but does not specifically list decreasing number of parking spaces. This proposal means that the applicants with a vested interest now becomes the authors of the affected zoning regulations and not those trusted with the common good. This is truly a slippery slope for the commission. The aspect of the proposal was not discussed at This aspect of the proposal was not discussed at last month's meeting. I believe it's a very significant point and requires further consideration. Thank you for your consideration.
are we ready?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, item 4. Any public comments, anyone from the public, comments on items not on the agenda? I don't see any public. So move on to item 5A.
Motion to adopt a consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 6A.
Let's
I think
Pass.
we already
move from the agenda.
moved to next meeting.
B.
Item 6B.
Proposed zoning regulation amendment, Town of Rocky Hill for proposed modifications to Rocky Hill zoning regulations, sections 9C 6, 3, and 4 concerning major and minor changes to approved plans.
Okay, this is what my recommendation is, I pretty much touched on it before, is that the reason I asked Kim to include the actual section was there were comments that we were adding and subtracting, but we were really making things a little bit more explicit. But what I think we should do at this point is each commissioner, if this is in line, each commissioner come up with any modifications, bad term, any corrections or changes to what was presented at the last meeting, and maybe get them to Kim within a few days, and then she can collate them, and then we present them all, not collate them, but just put them together, and we can discuss it in detail next month.
As an agenda item, not as a public meeting.
Correct. And then next month, we hopefully,
public meeting.
like we did in May, we'll come up with what we did in May was this is what we're going to present to the public and then set a public hearing for the month after that.
Sure.
Does that make sense? It just makes it a lot cleaner and rather than, so we all see what everybody's got in mind.
Because there were some things that were suggested at the last meeting
Yeah.
that I think were very good suggestions.
But
But the forum wasn't.
correct, it was a public hearing. And the issue I had was we went through this in detail at the May meeting. Everybody made their comments then, and then we wind up in a public hearing, and all of a sudden we're hit blindsided almost with a whole new batch of do this, do that, which
All right,
I
that's
think was-
good. So I think we move on. Yep, that's, we'll-
Okay.
Yep.
Are you cutting me off? Is that what you're doing?
no, you said you had to go watch something, right?
No, I don't. He did.
See, so
I mean, right.
I think that's,
And not,
yeah.
alternates and full-time, and
Everybody.
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 Making sure, okay.
It would be for discussion
Yeah.
purposes.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Just like our next
Making
item.
sure,
But at least we know in advance what's going to be
Yep.
discussed.
Sure.
So we get a little bit of a feel for what.
organization.
Exactly, that's my.
All right. Item
That's a good idea.
6C.
So what action was taken on, public hearing is closed. So this item here, item B, as it currently exists, is the commission acting on this right now?
So I think we
My
need,
my
we need
opinion, you
motion
are
to.
acting on this.
Okay,
Do we
You're
table
acting
it?
on what you
Can we
have.
table it, or is that,
that would be.
or do we deny it and start over
Deny
again?
without prejudice.
Yeah, that's, okay. That-
Motion to deny without prejudice,
That way.
proposed zoning regulation amendment, Town of Rocky Hill,
I'll second
And
that.
the reason
All in
why.
favor?
with,
you-
with a condition that all commissioners, no.
No,
No
you
condition on
denying
denial.
with it.
Forget it. The reason being is that gives an opportunity to all commissioners to come up with a formula and have a cohesive change in regulations if needed to go to public hearing again.
I'll second that. You see, you didn't cut him off.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
You're biased.
6C, discussion on section 4C1, accessory uses and structures permitted by right, no zoning permit required. Uses customarily accessory to permitted uses. The commission reserves the right to determine what is customary, subordinate, and incidental to a permitted use.
The reason why this is on the agenda deals with accessory uses in non-residential uses, districts or business districts. And this came up because of Ace Hardware, as a matter of fact. For years, we as staff have been improving like sidewalk sales, what have you. We don't approve anything in the parking lot as a accessory use because that's not appropriate. That's why they came before you. This section, I find the wording extremely interesting on this section. I don't agree with a lot of things here. It reads 4C1, Section 1. They're permitted by right, which means there's no approval process, no zoning permit required. But if you look at the text, uses customarily accessory to a permitted use. That's pretty clear. But then, in parentheses, the commission reserves the right to determine what is customary, subordinate, and incidental to a permitted use. So if the commission reserves the right to determine that, but it's permitted by right, and there's no zoning permit required, talk about a conflict.
Yeah.
That's extremely
I
conflicting.
think,
So we're
There-
getting into a similar thing to the minor and major modifications, is that we have minor modifications, we have major modifications, or anything that anybody really decides.
Well,
I'm oversimplifying it, but it should, this should be more explicit also, in my mind. It's too vague.
so I
Well,
think,
this is beyond vague. This is
Contradictory.
it says, okay, you can do it by right, so you don't need permission, but yet the commission reserves the right to determine what you can do.
I think what it says is,
Giveth and taketh away.
what it says is like, once commission decides, right, what is customary, subordinate, and incidental to a permitted use, right? Once the commission decides that, then it becomes a,
It's a-
permitted by right.
Okay, but.
I
but-
think,
When did the commission decide that?
I think that, right, so, so I think that's the thing, like,
Well, as of July of 30th of 2017, you guys will have to, you guys determine that you reserve the right to.
right. So I
So
think.
does that mean I can determine it, and then, oh, by the way, you don't agree, now they have to come back?
I think
Is that
that's
what it says? Because that's not how it is. Because it says no permits required, and it's permitted by right.
But you need a permit, is what you're saying. It's really,
Yeah, it needs to be reworked.
It's ambiguous.
And these accessory uses, from what I recall, can be an attached,
This is for business uses, just so
Oh,
you
for
know,
business.
right,
districts.
yeah, these are,
This is strictly business districts.
well, using the hardware store example, their accessory use is selling, not sod, but topsoil, peat moss and mulch and stuff like that. So that's an
But
accessory
they do.
use.
But they do anyways.
Right. But it's an
We're
accessory,
well, the use there was in the parking area,
yeah.
but that was under executive orders.
Mm-hmm.
So that's different. The executive orders are gone, so.
True, but it was actually, to be honest with ourselves, it's been, things like that have been used since I moved into Rocky Hill 21 years ago. We've found, well, I mean, even in the regulations we have, temporary, I mean, look at what, I don't want to mention names, but they used to be,
Walmart?
no.
They
no,
got approval.
Right, but now I'm talking about there's parking lot sales that stores and organizations run for like a weekend or 2 weekends in a row. I don't know if it happens anymore, and I don't want to mention the business because it's not fair. But, so, I think, well, I'm just taking this over for now, I'm sorry about that. I think we should clarify that section somehow and remove the ambiguity. You can do it, but then again, you can't do it unless you get a permit, but you don't need a permit.
so it raises more questions than it answers.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Is
yes,
there
it
any
does.
way we can get some insight into what other towns are doing?
I mean,
with this
I
issue,
think
because it's.
we should
it's
go
a-
back to, I had discussion with staff, and I think we should go back to Glenn, who was the author of this, and probably he can provide some insight as to why it's written such a way. I think, because what we tried to do, I mean, we have Glenn, I mean, he's not going to charge us when we ask one question and say,
Not a lot.
I don't agree with that statement.
so is he going to charge?
I don't agree with what you just said.
The meter.
But does it charge for one question? We follow up, like, hey, can you clarify?
He may. He has
So,
a right
so we
to.
don't know, right?
He has
Yeah.
a right to.
That was a
Yep.
10-minute phone call.
She has a big budget. That's the question.
The answer is no, I don't.
All right, so I think let's
Clear it up.
see if you can clear up. I mean, first you ask him, are they going to charge? If you're going to charge, then let's, we'll work.
And how much did you charge for the question?
Okay,
Okay.
so that's it, right? Let's move on.
Well, you agree it's an issue.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we
confusing.
need clarification.
At
Just
at
for
the very
example.
least.
Yes.
Okay.
I know it's under, probably, they've got a permit, but driving here down Elm Street, when I got to Elm Ridge Park, there's a whole bunch of tents up there that I didn't even know about.
That's
So
the-
flea market.
That's the
That's the farmer's market.
Farmer's market.
Correct.
It's
But I mean,
that's an event.
Yeah.
That's an event.
So
So,
a hardware
yeah.
store wanted to have a 6-month event.
No, why not 1 year? I would love 1 year.
Well, they would need it in the winter too, because
Yeah.
there's salt out there, so
So,
it should be
I
all
mean,
year
they can
round.
do everything.
That's always inside. That's
Is
No,
it?
no, I think outside is better, like.
Yeah.
I would say leave it on the sidewalk.
All right,
Move it.
item 7A, zoning enforcement.
Okay, I did see a spreadsheet in here. I don't know if this is up to date, because I know other things have been added.
I think that was from last month. I'm not sure.
No, we got Lakeview on there.
Looks like the last entry was July 3rd.
No.
No, we got
The
more.
date on top should say 6/14, because that's when it's, that's when
It's
it's.
7/14.
Oh,
It says
7/14.
7/14. No, I think well,
No, it's added. There's more.
I think there were a few things that were added since then.
7/14.
But, I'm trying to think. We're still getting a lot of complaints. It's primarily blight. We did receive something the end of last week. I was out last week. It came in through police department. I won't give an address. But there were people residing in campers in the back. You can't see it from the street. People residing in garages, so there's a lot going on this property. So we'll be tackling that, at least trying to start the process by the end of this week. Let's see. What else?
2 roosters.
Pardon?
2 roosters.
A lot of roosters, yes, a lot of roosters. Tall grass seems to be the big thing. And I know that's blight more so than the other. We have some people that are when they had there was a commercial vehicle over on Garden Street. The gentleman still calls me and makes sure, if he's just pulling in his driveway. Just to say, I'm putting in my driveway for a brief period of time. I just want to let you know I'm not staying overnight, and then I just drive by on my way home. Sure enough, it's gone. But
I know we discussed this before. There was the road in front of what's the school there on the new one they just built? Mosier School. Is that a town road? Because the vehicle's still parking, there's still an 18-wheeler parked there without the truck, just a trailer.
It's on Gilbert, too.
Gilbert? Yeah.
Gilbert?
There's another one on Gilbert. There's
On
one
Gilbert?
No, this is just the back,
On
the
Gilbert, there's
flatbed.
someone who lives there, has a tractor.
The cab.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Get
talking
that
about
guy and that guy together and they.
I don't know about Gilbert. I know about.
Yeah, that's been
the
going on for
one
years, though, now.
You speak, because one time I actually saw the person get out of the truck, and the person ran, literally hauled into that neighborhood there.
Yeah, well, this,
So I
he's
believe that person lives there
disconnecting
somewhere.
the truck and just leaving the trailer there.
So,
And I was like,
Is that just one or he's multiple?
it's the same guy.
Same, no, one
Is
trailer?
it a town road?
no. That, as you
So he's
as you
parking
come
on-
down Scroll Street
Yeah.
and you veer to the right, it's off to your left.
Left.
No, that's not a town road.
So he's parking on
On-
school
on-
property?
On parking lot for the school.
Oh, okay. Maybe we should have that guy in Garden Street go park there.
So are there
No.
shopping cart complaints? Is that a crime? Is there some kind of crime occurring? Because they're ending up off the property.
It's theft. It
Yeah.
really is theft, so.
It's right over on Town Line,
It,
too.
it really is
That's what it is,
theft,
yeah.
and,
Yeah,
and,
happens all the
and
time.
so, but
But reported
I
as
get-
blight, yeah.
it's reported to the town manager's office, as a matter of fact, and then I'm called. And so I called the property owners, and the person that owns the plaza where Mitchell's is, they said, I'll take care of it. Whatever that means, it was gone. So that's good, and I haven't seen it since. So
Good.
All
I
right.
said, okay,
So-
but not on town line.
So I think this covers a 7B minor amendment modifications as well?
No, there was a minor
There was
modification.
one.
Did you get approved?
It did get approved. It did get approved. It was for West Hill School. The facilities director Ron Lamontagne came to me and asked about using a 30 by 30-foot area that once was a portable classroom area. Of course, I don't like the name portable classrooms, but for an outdoor classroom. So basically putting up a fence, putting picnic tables, bolting them into the ground, and putting up like a canopy over it so a class can go outside and have learning activities outside in a secure area. So That's a minor change.
It's a good use of a minor modification.
I approved it as such, and it is in your packet this evening.
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
7C, plan implementation committee. I think we discussed this
we didn't
now.
have a- we didn't have a
Yeah,
meeting.
we are meeting every quarter, so. 7D, legislation.
Well, plan implementation, I guess we're meeting soon.
I don't know the date, but we are.
Legislation, we're going to be proposing and updating regulation for EV charging stations. We've had, just so you know, we have had a request, and there's been an actual building permit applied for a property along Celestine Highway. Under ADA, there's a section where if you are restriping a parking lot, you have to bring your ADA up to compliance, or if you're restriping. We're considering this restriping because they are doing some restriping in front of this business. So right now, there's a dialogue between staff, the property owner, and the contractor, because we want them to bring up the property to ADA compliance with respect to parking.
In the spirit of EV, did we ever look at trying to get something on the books for public EV stations? Kind of like that Tesla station that went in?
Like here,
Yeah.
that has not come up yet.
Do we need to talk about that as,
That
think
probably will
Get it in
We
the-
during
should
the,
talk, yeah.
well, if it's in the regs, then we can,
But it's not right now. I don't
Yeah,
think.
it's not right
that's
now.
If we can add it, or is there a proposal, or is that
that's part of
Glenn
the,
Chalder?
no.
No,
we're-
we can
We're
make-
doing a
can-
regulation amendment for next month's meeting.
Okay, thank
We
you.
can do that. And then POCD, I think that is coming up, and we
Should
got,
we should have discussions
we
on
got-
that with respect to scope.
right,
The town budget, they originally were requesting, we were originally requesting $50,000 to get us an update on the existing POCD. They wanted to knock that out down to zero, and then due to a conversation someone on this commission had with somebody else, it went up to $20,000. So we have $20,000 for an update. So the scope will, and we have to be very upfront when we advertise, this is what we have, this is what we want, this is what we have, and then work with them on the scope.
so I think that should be, we should start there, because it's going to take a couple of months,
Yes.
so that
When's it up? 25?
20.
Yep.
Is that 25?
You did.
Yeah, 25.
25.
So, all right. Any other communications?
There was a request, and I didn't know that this would be in the packet, but it was just an inquiry. Does the town allow gastro parks, which is basically a food truck park? And there was an inquiry. I did look at West Hartford's, because West Hartford does have one. So I did provide, it's under their zoning, and this is in their town code. But, so it's more of an ordinance, but it's in here, in your packet for information. And they talk about the health, of issues and what you can have and what's required in sanitation facilities, what have you, surfaces. So I did also inquire of the Central Connecticut Health District about that. They don't have anything specific because it's nothing within our four-town area, but they mentioned West Hartford also, to take a look at that, to see if the commission wants to even consider that. I don't know, I know there's interest.
It's very well done in West Hartford.
Yeah.
It's very well done. It's a good use of converting a very old commercial building to something that's.
It's a food truck.
Yeah, no, this is the
Well,
parking
it
lot.
can be, it could be a
No,
food truck,
they're in
it
the
could be
parking
a,
lot, But the inside is like, you can have eating bands, they have a coffee shop.
No, I think that's a different location.
That's
You're
a
talking
different-
about Park Street.
I'm talking about, yeah,
New
Yeah,
Park
no, this
Avenue,
is-
right?
This is on Farmington Ave in West Hartford. It's just a parking
I
lot.
thought we were talking
No?
about the new park one.
Is this a planning and zoning
Yeah,
issue?
because there's,
Well, it is.
No, because
If it came
no,
in front
because
of
there's
us.
different.
Because this is the
yeah.
modern way, this is kind of like a modern way to assemble, and food trucks are kind of like a thing now, so.
Yeah, because you can do that as well. I mean, you
Of
could have a
course.
building with seating.
It's modified
You could have
outdoor
outdoor
dining.
seating, you can have restrooms
You can have
inside the building.
music,
You can have,
have-
yeah, whatever.
I personally think we should look at it because it brings this town to the next step, like, I think we should look at it. to
So I
be
think we have food truck or trucks, couple of locations, right? On
Few.
Brook Street,
A
we
few.
have one. So it's like an individual trucks we already have, but these are.
honest. No, but
we're-
this is,
We are talking about,
they have several
Right.
for options. Basically, it's the food option at a place.
right,
And then
Or you
they-
could have food trucks, you could have inside that building, you could have like a food court at a mall in addition to the food trucks outside. And they could be different, they can change, they don't all have to be there at the same time. They still are required to be licensed, and for a vending permit, they still have to go through the police department for a vending permit and go through all the health district inspections as well, so.
I think it's good idea because we have to we have to address those singular trucks that are out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they
Well,
have any
the
permits or any-
commission doesn't address the singular
No,
trucks,
no,
that's
no.
under the
Right.
vending
But
ordinance.
technically, this could be the next step to
Right.
these little standalone breweries
Yep.
that are coming into these office
Coming
parks.
together and-
This is kind of like the next step. They want to have food truck to pull up, now you're turning it into a gastro park. So we should address it. It's a good idea.
I got one good idea.
Yes, please.
I second it.
Okay, two good ideas.
All in favor, right, everybody? Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then, I don't know why this is in the packet also. There was a letter from the building official. I don't even see where it is now.
Where is it?
There was a letter from the building official, and it was, oh, there it is. It was concerning the Cedar Hollow condominium complex.
I was actually going to ask about that.
I'm not quite sure why it was in here. I was going to talk about it anyways. Obviously, we know we had a lot of rain. We had the equivalent of a 1,000-year storm based upon the quantity of rain in such a short time period. There was literally 4 feet of water on Main Street in front of CVS. We are very glad that the Kelson Row property was not paved. If it was paved, it would have been far worse. They had installed oil their erosion sedimentation controls prior to that particular rain event. They have also added additional berms. With this originally installed silt fence, they installed a mini berm of wood chips as well. So they've gone above and beyond. They also have sent a camera down the pipe that's going from Main Street down through their property in an easement to Cedar Hollow's line, and they also worked with they hired an engineer at Cedar Hollow, and they worked with them so they could TV the pipes on their property as well to look for any obstructions. That wasn't found. So now we have to figure out if there's something else that can be done. So
It's a
that's what-
town, it's a town right away, right? It's a town pipe, is that,
Well, it's,
or is that?
we always thought it was a state.
Is it?
We always thought it was a state pipe, but
Down?
it's because there's like an 82 to 85 acre watershed feeding to this 42-inch pipe that it's been the town's for a while.
So, we as a planning and zoning commission,
This is just an FYI.
I mean, we
This
could,
is just a FYI.
Yeah, they just-
I mean, that storm was extraordinary.
Yep.
I see more of those coming, but that has to do with environmental factors. But the design, when engineers design drainage systems, it's for a 100-year storm. You heard your people talking tonight about a 100-year storm.
Yep.
And that's the standard that they design to. They don't design for 1,000-year storms.
No, but they had said in the public testimony too that the pipe that was in the ground was designed for a 100-year storm a very long time ago, when those numbers were even different, and that the numbers have
Yes.
been increasing ever since.
Yes.
Which is my point earlier, is
Yeah.
that, you know, folks come to us, you know, this particular site was up for proposed development, and it doesn't matter what additional impact they were gonna have on the system, the current system couldn't handle it. So,
But
how
it
do we-
wasn't,
how
it
do we
wasn't
ever-
theirs, it was going from a state road. So
Yeah.
it wasn't their development.
No, no, no.
Their development,
No, I know.
they're
It
doing,
was,
they're taking care of their development.
but it was, the flow coming through that property was going to this pipe, and then that pipe can't handle it. I don't know how many more situations we have like this.
I don't know.
Things happen.
No, I mean, you can't design one in 10-year or 20-year event, right?
Right, we don't reverse manage decisions that were made 20, 30 years ago.
Yep, okay.
Morning quarterback.
All right.
Probably done before
Item 9,
Ames.
approve bills.
That pipe was in before Ames was in.
Yeah, we don't have bills. Item 10,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.